Hey everyone, it's Sophia. And you will not believe what happened the other day. I was feeling a little restless, you know, that kind of energy where you just need to do something. It was evening, the sky was that deep indigo color just before it gets completely dark, and I was just sitting there, looking out the window. And suddenly, completely out of the blue, I decided to go for a walk. Not just any walk, mind you, but a long walk. At night, honestly, it felt so spontaneous, almost like magic. I just grabbed my jacket, laced up my sneakers, and stepped out into the cool night air. There was a gentle breeze rustling the leaves, and the air smelled so fresh and clean. It was such a peaceful, invigorating feeling. I had no destination in mind, no particular route planned. I just let my feet carry me wherever they wanted to go. It was truly liberating, and such an unexpected adventure. And you know what? I ended up seeing my neighborhood in a whole new light. So, let's begin our exciting journey of English improvement together. Remember, there are new videos released daily focusing on English speaking and listening skills to help you improve and enjoy your learning journey. Okay, so, picture this. It's a crisp January morning, the kind where the air bites at your cheeks and the sun glares off the pristine snow, making everything sparkle like a million tiny diamonds. I'm bundled up like a marshmallow, think. Puffy ski jacket, ridiculously thick gloves, a beanie pulled down to my eyebrows. Standing at the base of this imposing mountain. Mount Washington, to be exact. Majestic, right? Intimidating, too. Especially for someone who's never even strapped a snowboard to their feet before. Because, yes, you guessed it, this was the day I decided to conquer snowboarding. Or at least, you know, attempt to stand upright on a board for more than 5 seconds without face planting into the snow. I'd always been a skier, a relatively competent one at that, gliding down the slopes with a certain grace, you could say. But snowboarding? That felt like a whole different beast. Something edgy, cool, a little rebellious. I wanted a piece of that. Now, I'd watched snowboarders before, obviously, effortlessly carving down the mountain, leaving these beautiful S-shaped trails in their wake. It looked easy. Spoiler alert. It's not. My friend, Lisa, a snowboarding pro, or so she claimed, had agreed to be my instructor. She was already suited up, looking all sleek and sporty in her snowboarding gear, bouncing on the balls of her feet like she was ready to take on the X Games. Me? I felt like I was wearing a spacesuit and had approximately the same level of mobility. Ready to shred some pow, newbie. She grinned, tossing me a pair of what looked like oversized clown shoes. My snowboarding boots. Let's get you strapped in. The process of just getting onto the board was a comedy of errors in itself. Imagine a baby giraffe trying to ice skate. That was essentially me. Strapped in, I couldn't even stand up straight without wobbling precariously. The board, this alien object attached to my feet, seemed to have a mind of its own, constantly threatening to slide out from under me. Okay, so the key is balance, Lisa explained patiently, demonstrating a graceful shift of weight. Easy for her to say. My balance, at that moment, felt about as stable as a Jenga tower built on a trampoline. We started on the bunny slope, naturally. Even that, a gentle incline barely worthy of the name, slope, felt like a sheer cliff face to my terrified brain. Lisa had me practice falling leafing, which basically involves sliding down the hill sideways on your heel edge. Sounds simple, right? Wrong. My first attempt resulted in an ungainly tumble that sent me rolling down the hill like a rogue snowball, collecting a healthy coating of snow in every crevice of my clothing. Lisa, bless her heart, tried not to laugh, but I could see the amusement twinkling in her eyes. You okay? She asked, extending a hand to help me up. Peachy, I mumbled, spitting out a mouthful of snow. My pride was slightly bruised, my butt definitely bruised, but my determination, surprisingly intact. I tried again, and again, and again. Each attempt ended in a slightly different variation of falling, sliding, and generally making a fool of myself. I felt like a human bowling pin, constantly being knocked down by an invisible force. The crisp mountain air, which I'd initially found so invigorating, now seemed to mock me with its icy chill. I could smell the dampness of the snow, taste the metallic tang of frustration on my tongue. But you know what? Somewhere amidst the tumbles and the muttered curses and the growing collection of snow down my jacket, something clicked. A tiny, almost imperceptible shift in my understanding of how this whole snowboarding thing worked. I started to feel the board beneath my feet, not as an enemy, but as an extension of myself. I began to anticipate its movements, to adjust my weight accordingly. And then, it happened. A glorious, fleeting moment of balance. I slid down a short stretch of the bunny slope without falling. No dramatic tumbles, no faceplants, just smooth, controlled movement. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't fast, but it was it. I was snowboarding. A triumphant whoop escaped my lips. Lisa cheered. I felt a rush of pure, unadulterated joy, the kind that comes from overcoming a challenge, from pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone. Of course, the next 5 minutes were spent promptly wiping out again, reminding me that I was still very much a beginner. But that initial success, that small taste of victory, had ignited a fire in me. I was determined to master this. We spent the rest of the morning on the bunny slope, me slowly, painstakingly, improving. I learned to link turns, albeit clumsily. I discovered the painful reality of catching an edge. I tasted snow more times than I care to remember. But with each fall, I got up a little quicker, a little more confident. By lunchtime, my legs were burning, my muscles aching, and my ego slightly bruised, but I was grinning from ear to ear. I'd gone from a wobbly, terrified newbie to someone who could at least navigate the bunny slope without resembling a drunken penguin. Progress, right? We grabbed some hot chocolate and chili at the lodge, the warmth spreading through my chilled limbs. Sitting there, surrounded by other skiers and snowboarders, I felt a sense of belonging, of camaraderie. I was one of them, a part of this snow-loving tribe, even if I was still the clumsiest member. After lunch, fueled by caffeine and a newfound sense of self-belief, we ventured onto a slightly steeper slope. This was it, the real deal. My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of excitement and terror. Guess what happened next? Yep, you guessed it. I fell. A lot. The steeper incline meant faster speeds, which, for a beginner like me, translated into more spectacular wipeouts. I slid, I tumbled, I even managed to accidentally take out a small child. He was fine, thankfully, just a little startled. It was humbling, to say the least. But even amidst the falls, there were moments of grace, flashes of that earlier success. I managed to string together a few decent turns, feeling the wind whip past my face, the thrill of speed coursing through my veins. It was exhilarating, addictive. I was hooked. By the end of the day, I was exhausted, sore, and covered in snow, but I felt triumphant. I hadn't conquered snowboarding, not by a long shot, but I'd faced my fear, I'd pushed my limits, and I'd discovered a new passion. As I limped back to the car, my legs screaming in protest, I knew one thing for sure. I was coming back. This snowboarding journey had just begun. And, I couldn't wait to see where it would take me. Even if it meant a few more faceplants along the way. Because, honestly, isn't that part of the fun? You know what I mean? The challenge, the struggle, the eventual triumph, however small it may seem. It's all part of the experience. And it's an experience I wouldn't trade for anything. Even a perfectly executed ski run. Well, almost anything. So, you know how sometimes you just get a yearning? Not for anything specific, just a yearning for something new? That's where I was a few months ago. Stuck in a rut, same old routine. Even my cooking had become predictable. Pasta Mondays, Taco Tuesdays, you get the picture. I needed a shake-up, an adventure, a sprinkle of, well, magic. And where did I find it? In my dusty, neglected cookbook, of course. Specifically, in the baking section. Baking. Me, the queen of burnt toast. It was ambitious, I'll give you that. Now, I'm not a natural baker. My kitchen skills are more of the throw it all in a pot and hope for the best variety. Baking, with its precise measurements and finicky temperatures, always felt a little intimidating. But this yearning, this need for something different, it was stronger than my fear of flour explosions and sinking cakes. I started small, a simple banana bread recipe. How hard could it be, right? I mean, it's bananas and bread. Two of the most forgiving ingredients known to humankind. I gathered my ingredients, feeling like a novice alchemist about to embark on a grand experiment. Overripe bananas, check. Flour, that bag lurking in the back of the pantry, check. Sugar, eggs, vanilla, check, check, check. I even mashed the bananas with an almost aggressive enthusiasm, like I was taking out all my pent-up creative frustrations on those poor, speckled fruits. And then, the mixing. The recipe said to fold the ingredients. Fold? What does that even mean? I mean, I've folded laundry, folded paper airplanes, but folding cake batter? It felt like a secret language only experienced bakers knew. I tentatively mixed the wet and dry ingredients, trying to imagine I was gently tucking a baby into its crib rather than creating a lumpy, gooey mess. The batter went into the loaf pan, looking suspiciously dense. But hey, it smelled amazing. That warm, comforting aroma of baking banana bread filled my kitchen, and suddenly, I felt a surge of optimism. Maybe, just maybe, I wouldn't burn the house down. An hour later, a toothpick inserted into the center came out clean. Victory! I pulled the loaf out of the oven, golden brown and fragrant. It wasn't the prettiest loaf, a bit cracked on top, but it was mine. And you know what? It tasted heavenly, warm, moist, with that perfect balance of sweetness and banana-y goodness. I devoured a thick slice, feeling a sense of accomplishment I hadn't felt in ages. That banana bread was just the beginning. Emboldened by my success, I moved on to more challenging recipes. A lemon drizzle cake that, after a few disastrous attempts involving curdled batter and a distinctly sulfuric smell, don't ask, eventually turned out light, fluffy, and bursting with citrusy flavor. Guess what happened next? I tried croissants. Yes, croissants. Those delicate, flaky, buttery masterpieces that seem to defy the laws of physics. Oh, the croissants. They were a journey. Let me tell you, laminated dough is not for the faint of heart. My first attempt resembled something more like, well, dense, buttery rocks. I'm pretty sure you could have used them to build a small wall. The second attempt was slightly better, but still far from the airy, layered perfection I was aiming for. Flour was everywhere. My kitchen looked like a blizzard had blown through. I was covered in sticky dough, muttering curses under my breath. There were tears. There was definitely wine. But I'm stubborn, you see? I'm not one to give up easily. I watched countless YouTube videos, read articles, even consulted with a friend who's a professional pastry chef, bless her patient soul. I learned about proofing times, butter temperatures, and the importance of a sharp knife for creating those beautiful, crisp layers. And then, on attempt number, I've lost count, honestly, it happened. I pulled a tray of golden, crescent-shaped croissants out of the oven. They weren't perfect, mind you, but they were close. Light, flaky, with a delicate crispness and a buttery, melt-in-your-mouth interior. I actually squealed with delight. My husband, who had been cautiously observing my baking adventures from a safe distance, cautiously approached and took a bite. His eyes widened. These, he declared, are actually good. That, my friend, was high praise indeed. From croissants, I ventured into the world of sourdough. Now, sourdough is a whole other level of baking obsession. Feeding your starter, monitoring its rise and fall, feeling like you're nurturing a living, breathing creature, it's a weird and wonderful experience. My sourdough starter, lovingly named Doug, became like a pet. I'd talk to him, worry about him if he seemed a little sluggish, and celebrate his bubbly activity with a little happy dance. And the bread, oh, the bread, the tangy, chewy, crusty loaves that emerged from my oven were a revelation. I felt like I had unlocked some ancient baking secret, some mystical knowledge passed down through generations. This whole baking journey, it wasn't just about the food, you know? It was about the process. The slow, deliberate rhythm of measuring, mixing, kneading, waiting. It was about the small victories, the lessons learned from mistakes, the sheer joy of creating something beautiful and delicious from simple ingredients. It was about finding a sense of peace and accomplishment in a world that often feels chaotic and overwhelming. I still burn things occasionally, mind you. Just last week, I attempted a batch of macarons that ended up looking like, well, let's just say they wouldn't win any beauty contests. But you know what? I don't mind, because even the failures are part of the process. They remind me that it's okay to experiment, to take risks, to embrace the messiness of life. And who knows, maybe one day, I'll even conquer those elusive macarons. So, what's the moral of the story? I don't know, maybe it's that sometimes, the greatest adventures are found in the most unexpected places. Maybe it's that it's never too late to learn something new, to challenge yourself, to discover hidden talents you never knew you had. Or maybe it's just that banana bread is really, really good. You know what I mean? Hey everyone, learning a new language can feel like climbing a mountain, but remember, every step you take is a victory. Your journey inspires others without you realizing it. Think about it. Seeing someone bravely tackling a new language can be incredibly motivating. It reminds us that anything is possible with dedication and effort, and your progress might just be the spark someone else needs to start their own adventure. It truly is inspiring. And you know what? Speaking practice doesn't have to be complicated. Something fun and easy you can try is describing your ideal day. Imagine waking up in a cozy cabin, the smell of coffee drifting in from the kitchen. Just narrate it aloud, even while you're making breakfast or walking the dog. You will not believe how much this simple exercise can boost your fluency and confidence. It's like painting a picture with words, and it's all yours to create. Finding idioms and slang confusing? Oh, I totally get it. It's like stumbling upon a secret code. One minute you think you're following along, and then bam! Someone throws in a piece of cake, or tells you they're feeling blue, and you're left wondering what just happened. It's a shared experience, believe me, and it's all part of the learning journey. Don't let it discourage you. Honestly, it felt like magic the first time I confidently used a new phrase in a conversation. It's such a rush. Which brings me to a question for you all. What's one phrase you wish you could say perfectly in English? I remember trying to order coffee in Italy, and it just wouldn't come out right. I'd love to hear what phrase has been on your mind. Let's chat in the comments. So, you want to hear about my bread baking saga? Oh, honey, buckle up, because it's a journey. It's not just flour and water, you know? It's a whole emotional roller coaster. It all started, I think, with a sourdough starter someone gave me. It was this gloopy, bubbling thing in a mason jar. Honestly, it looked a little alien. And it had a name. Beatrice. Can you believe it? Naming a sourdough starter? I thought it was a bit much, but hey, who was I to judge? Beatrice became my new roommate. Now, I'm not exactly what you'd call a baker. My usual culinary adventures involve toast. Maybe some scrambled eggs if I'm feeling ambitious. So, this whole bread making thing? Totally uncharted territory. But there was something about the idea of creating something so basic, so fundamental, with my own two hands. It just called to me. Plus, the internet was full of these gorgeous, crusty loaves. I wanted in on the action. The first few days with Beatrice were interesting. I had to feed her regularly, which basically meant giving her more flour and water. It felt very strange, like, was she even alive? Was I talking to a jar of goo? But dutifully, I followed the instructions, stirring and coaxing, whispering encouragements to the little blob. Grow, Beatrice, grow. I'd say. My family thought I'd lost it. Then came the first attempt at actual bread. I'd printed out this recipe, a simple sourdough boule, they called it, and it looked like a scientific equation. Grams of this, percentages of that, autolyse, bulk fermentation, what in the world? It was intimidating, to say the least. I remember measuring everything meticulously. The kitchen scales became my best friend. Flour dusted the counter, creating a soft, white landscape. And the smell, that fresh, earthy scent of flour. It was intoxicating. Mixing the dough was a workout, let me tell you. It was sticky and resistant, clinging to my fingers like a needy toddler. I kneaded and folded, following the instructions with the concentration of a brain surgeon. My arms ached, my back protested, but I persevered. This bread was happening, come hell or high water. Then came the waiting. Sourdough, you see, is a slow dance. It's not like your average yeasted bread where everything's done in a couple of hours. No, Sourdough takes its sweet time. Hours of rising, hours of folding, hours of, well, mostly waiting. I kept peeking at the dough, like a nervous expectant parent. Was it rising enough? Was it too warm? Was it even alive anymore? Doubt not at me. Maybe Beatrice had abandoned me. Maybe I was doomed to a life of store-bought bread. But then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, it began to grow. It puffed up, filling the bowl, becoming a soft, pillowy cloud. A tiny thrill went through me. It was working. I felt a surge of pride, like I'd single-handedly conquered Mount Everest. Finally, the moment of truth arrived. I shaped the dough, a wobbly, imperfect sphere, and placed it gently in a Dutch oven. Into the hot oven it went. And then, more waiting. The aroma that filled the kitchen while the bread baked, oh my goodness. It was heavenly, earthy, yeasty, with a hint of sweetness. It was the smell of home, the smell of comfort, the smell of, well, bread. It made my stomach rumble and my heart sing. And then, the unveiling. I lifted the lid of the Dutch oven, and there it was. My bread, golden brown, crusty, magnificent. It wasn't perfect. It was a little lopsided, a little rustic, but it was mine. I tapped the bottom, listening for that hollow sound, the sound of success. And it sang. The first slice, I can still taste it. The crisp crust giving way to the soft, chewy interior. The tangy sourdough flavor, a symphony in my mouth. It was the best bread I had ever tasted, hands down. Maybe it was because I made it myself. Maybe it was because I'd poured so much love and effort into it, but it was truly magical. Of course, not every loaf has been a masterpiece. There have been flops, flat loaves, dense loaves, loaves that resembled bricks more than bread. I've overproofed, underproofed, overbaked, underbaked. I've even killed Beatrice once or twice, or at least, I thought I had. But each time, I've learned something. I've tweaked the recipe, adjusted the temperature, experimented with different flours. Baking bread has taught me patience. It's taught me perseverance. It's taught me that even the simplest things can be incredibly rewarding. It's a process, a journey, a dance with flour and water and time. And you know what? It's a dance I wouldn't trade for anything. So, now when I see those perfect loaves on Instagram, I don't feel intimidated anymore. I smile, because I know the story behind the bread. I know the hours of waiting, the sticky fingers, the burnt crusts, the triumphs and the failures. And I know that the real magic of baking bread isn't in the perfect Instagram shot. It's in the journey, the process, the connection to something ancient and beautiful. It's in the sharing of a warm, crusty loaf with the people you love. You should try it sometime. Really, it's more than just bread, you know? It's an adventure. And who knows, maybe you'll even name your starter. Just don't tell Beatrice the first said that. Okay, so, picture this. It was a Tuesday. No, wait, a Wednesday. Definitely a Wednesday. One of those dreary, drizzly Wednesdays where the sky is this perpetual shade of dishwater gray. You know the kind, right? The kind that makes you want to curl up under a blanket with a good book and just disappear. And that's exactly what I wasn't doing. I was trudging, absolutely trudging, through the city, head down, fighting against the wind that seemed determined to steal my umbrella. My boots were soaked, my spirits were lower, and I was late. Late for a meeting I didn't even want to attend, about a project I didn't even care about. Life, you know, sometimes it just throws you a curveball. Or, in my case, a whole bucket of wet, gray curveballs. I was cutting through this little alleyway, not the safest, I'll admit, but it shaved off a good 5 minutes, when I saw it. A flicker. A warm, inviting flicker through a grimy window I'd never noticed before. I stopped, water dripping off my nose, and squinted. It looked cozy, like a little bubble of sunshine in this otherwise depressing cityscape. Curiosity, you know? It gets the better of me. So, I hesitantly pushed open the heavy wooden door, the kind that creaks dramatically, and stepped inside. The change was instantaneous. The noise of the city, the relentless drumming of the rain, it all just vanished. I was enveloped by this incredible aroma. Coffee, definitely, but not just any coffee. This was rich, dark, almost chocolatey, mingled with cinnamon and something else. Something sweet and fruity I couldn't quite place. The cafe itself was tiny. Maybe 5 tables, all mismatched and charmingly wobbly. The walls were painted this warm terracotta color, adorned with quirky little paintings, landscapes mostly, all bathed in a golden, almost dreamlike light. Bookshelves lined the back wall, overflowing with well-loved paperbacks. It felt timeless, like it had been plucked out of a different era and gently placed in this forgotten corner of the city. Behind the counter stood a woman, her face etched with 1,000 stories. She had this kind, knowing smile, and her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, speckled with gray. She looked up as I entered, and her eyes, they were the color of warm honey, crinkled at the corners. "Welcome, dear," she said, her voice soft like a whisper. Come in, out of the rain." I mumbled a greeting, feeling suddenly awkward. My damp coat was dripping onto the worn wooden floor, and I was acutely aware of my bedraggled appearance. "Don't you worry about that," she chuckled, gesturing to a small table near the window. "Sit down, get warm. Can I get you something? A coffee, perhaps?" Did I want a coffee? I needed a coffee, and maybe something else. Something to chase away the gloom that had settled deep in my bones. "Yes, please," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "A coffee, and what is that smell?" She smiled again, that knowing, gentle smile. "Ah, that would be our apple and cinnamon cake. Fresh out of the oven. A house specialty. Apple and cinnamon cake." It sounded heavenly. "I'll have a slice of that too, please," I managed, sinking into the worn velvet armchair. As I waited, I took in the details of the little cafe. A vintage radio played softly in the corner, crooning a jazzy tune I vaguely recognized. Sunlight, filtering through a gap in the clouds, illuminated dust motes dancing in the air. It was magical, a complete and utter contrast to the gray, chaotic world outside. The woman, I later learned her name was Alara, brought me my coffee and cake. The coffee was everything I had hoped for. Rich, dark, with a hint of something magical. The cake was warm, the apples soft and sweet, the cinnamon a comforting hug. I took a bite, closed my eyes, and just breathed. For the first time in what felt like forever, I actually breathed. The stress, the anxiety, the weight of the world, it all just melted away. Alara sat down opposite me, a steaming mug of tea in her hands. "So," she said, her eyes twinkling, "what brings you to my little corner of the world?" And I told her about the dreary weather, the dreadful meeting, the general sense of blah. I told her about feeling lost and overwhelmed and just tired. And she listened, really listened, without judgment, without interruption, just listening. We talked for what felt like hours. About life, about dreams, about the little things that make it all worthwhile. She told me stories about the cafe, about the people who had passed through its doors over the years. Each story was a little gem, a testament to the power of human connection. I realized, as I sat there, sipping my coffee and listening to Alara's stories, that I had stumbled upon something truly special. A hidden sanctuary, a place where time seemed to slow down, where worries faded away, and where human connection was the currency of the day. Guess what happened next? I completely forgot about the meeting. Completely. It slipped my mind entirely. And you know what? I didn't care. Not one bit. For the first time in a long time, I felt content. Peaceful. Like I had found a little piece of myself that I hadn't even realized was missing. I left the cafe hours later, the rain having finally stopped. The city, though still gray, seemed brighter. Lighter. The weight on my chest had lifted, replaced by a sense of hope. I've been back to Alara's cafe many times since that day. It's become my sanctuary, my escape from the chaos of the world. A place where I can go to recharge, to connect, to simply be. And every time I push open that heavy wooden door, and inhale that intoxicating aroma of coffee and cinnamon, I'm reminded of that dreary Wednesday afternoon, and the day I discovered a hidden cafe, and a little piece of magic, tucked away in a forgotten corner of the city. It's funny, isn't it? How sometimes the smallest, most unexpected discoveries can have the biggest impact on our lives. You know what I mean? It's like the universe, sometimes, just knows what you need, even before you do. And sometimes, all it takes is a flicker of light in a grimy window to lead you to exactly where you need to be. Hey everyone! Learning a new language can feel like climbing a mountain, but remember, even the highest peaks are reachable one step at a time. Be fearless in chasing new words. Think of each new word as a little victory, a new tool in your communication kit. Don't be afraid to stumble or mispronounce. Every mistake is a step closer to fluency. Embrace the journey, and you will not believe how much you can achieve. You've got this, and you know what? I've found a fun little trick that really helps me practice speaking. Teaching an imaginary class. Imagine you're explaining something you love, maybe how to cook your favorite dish, or describing a beautiful park you visited, to a room full of eager students. You can do this while you're cooking dinner or even on a walk. It's a fantastic way to practice forming sentences and expressing yourself without any pressure. Honestly, it felt like magic when I first tried it. Worrying about speaking too fast or too slow is something I think we all experience. Sometimes I catch myself rushing through sentences, worried I'll lose my train of thought. Other times, I slow down so much, afraid of making a mistake, that it feels unnatural. It's like trying to find the perfect rhythm in a song. It's totally normal and part of the process. We're all in this together. Speaking of finding that perfect rhythm, I remember struggling with the th sound for ages. It felt so awkward. How do you practice English pronunciation daily? I'd love to hear your tips and tricks. Let's share our experiences in the comments below. Okay, so, you are never going to believe this story. It's about the morning I missed my bus, but it's so much more than just missing the bus, you know? It became this whole thing. A cascade of comical, slightly tragic, and ultimately, I guess, kind of beautiful little moments. Grab a cuppa, because this one's a bit of a saga. It all started, and I remember this vividly, with the smell of burnt toast. Not just lightly toasted, I'm talking charcoal black, smoke billowing, set off the fire alarm burnt. Now, I'm not usually a morning person, right? But I love toast. Like, really, really love toast. So the smell, usually a comforting beacon in the pre-dawn gloom, was this acrid assault on my senses. I bolted upright in bed, heart hammering like a trapped bird. My room was bathed in this weird, orangey glow. It took me a second to realize it wasn't the sunrise, but the reflection of the flames leaping from the toaster. My toaster, bless its chrome heart, had finally given up the ghost in a blaze of glory. Seriously? I groaned, scrambling out of bed. I'm pretty sure I was still wearing my sleep mask, which, looking back, probably wasn't the smartest move. Picture this. Half blind, hair like a bird's nest, stumbling towards a mini inferno in my kitchen. Not exactly a graceful start to the day. Anyway, I managed to extinguish the fiery toaster rebellion with a well-aimed tea towel. The kitchen was filled with this hazy smoke that smelled like burnt electronics and, you guessed it, burnt toast. I opened a window, fanning the air dramatically, like some kind of tragic heroine in a low-budget play. Well, that was exciting, I muttered to myself, surveying the damage. My toast, obviously, was a lost cause. The toaster, well, let's just say it had seen better days. And the kitchen clock? It blinked 7:45. My bus leaves at 7:55. Panic. Pure, unadulterated panic. My bus, you see, is not just any bus. It's the only direct route to my university, and if I missed it, my next option involved 2 transfers, a 40-minute walk, and arriving an hour late to my presentation. A presentation, I might add, that I'd been working on for weeks. Suddenly, the burnt toast seemed like a minor inconvenience. This was a full-blown crisis. So, what did I do? I did what any rational, sleep-deprived, toast-loving student would do. I ran. Not just a jog, a full-on sprint. I grabbed my backpack, threw on the first clothes I could find, which, embarrassingly, included mismatched socks and a shirt I'd worn to the gym the day before, and flew out the door. Now, I live on a hill. A steep hill, and my bus stop is at the bottom. So, imagine this. Me, in my mismatched glory, hurtling down this hill, backpack bouncing, hair streaming behind me like a deranged comet. I'm pretty sure I startled a few dog walkers. One elderly gentleman actually stopped and stared, mouth agape, like he'd just witnessed a unicorn sprinting down the street. I reached the bottom of the hill, lungs burning, legs screaming, just as I saw my bus pulling away from the stop. "No, wait," I yelled, waving my arms frantically. But the bus driver, bless his unseeing heart, just kept on driving. He didn't even glance in my direction. I stood there for a moment, bent double, hands on my knees, gasping for breath. Defeated. My presentation, my meticulously crafted slides, my perfectly rehearsed opening lines. All gone. All because of a piece of burnt toast. It was then, in that moment of utter despair, that I heard a chuckle. I looked up, and there, standing beside me, was a woman with the kindest eyes I'd ever seen. She was holding a thermos and a paper bag. "Rough morning?" she asked, a smile playing on her lips. I could only nod, feeling the tears prick at my eyes. "Here," she said, offering me the thermos. "Hot chocolate. It might help." I gratefully accepted the thermos and took a sip. The warm, sweet liquid flowed down my throat, chasing away the chill of the morning and, surprisingly, some of the despair. "You missed your bus, huh?" she asked gently. "Yeah," I croaked, my voice still shaky. "Big presentation today. Worked on it for weeks." "Well," she said, a twinkle in her eye. "Lucky for you, I'm heading that way. Hop in." And that, my friend, is how I ended up carpooling to university with a complete stranger who not only saved me from missing my presentation but also shared her delicious homemade banana bread, which, I have to say, was way better than burnt toast. We chatted the whole way, and I learned that her name was Evelyn. She was a retired librarian, and she volunteered at a local animal shelter. She was funny, insightful, and incredibly kind. It was like talking to an old friend. I aced my presentation, by the way. And afterwards, I made sure to find Evelyn and thank her again. We exchanged numbers, and she actually became a sort of mentor to me. We'd meet for coffee. She'd tell me stories about her life, and I'd tell her about mine. It was a totally unexpected, beautiful friendship that blossomed from a morning of chaos and burnt toast. So, yeah, the morning I missed my bus was a disaster. A comical, chaotic, burnt toast-fueled disaster. But you know what? It was also the morning I met Evelyn. And that, I think, makes it one of the best mornings of my life. It taught me that even in the midst of what seems like the worst possible scenario, there's always the possibility of something good, something unexpected, something, dare I say, magical, waiting just around the corner. You just have to be open to it. And maybe, just maybe, carry a spare toaster. You never know when you might need it. Okay, so, you know how sometimes you get these urges? Like, out of the blue, you absolutely have to do something you've never done before? That's what happened to me last Tuesday. I woke up with this burning desire, this absolute need to draw a portrait. Now, let me be clear. I'm about as artistic as a potato. My stick figures look like they've been through a wind tunnel, and my attempts at landscapes usually end up resembling abstract blobs of color. But this Tuesday, something was different. I was possessed, I tell you. Possessed by the muse of, well, probably the muse of badly drawn portraits, let's be honest. I stumbled into the kitchen, the smell of coffee barely registering as my brain whirred with artistic visions. The sunlight streaming through the window suddenly seemed significant. Artistic, even. I grabbed my lukewarm mug, the ceramic rough against my fingers, and stared out at Mrs. Higgins' ridiculously vibrant rose bushes. Inspiration, I whispered dramatically, making my cat, Winston, flick his tail in annoyance. Right, so, portraits. Who to draw? My first thought was Winston, because he was right there, judging me with his usual feline disdain. But he's mostly black fluff, and I wasn't ready for that level of monochrome challenge. Then I remembered a postcard tucked into my fridge, a picture of my ridiculously photogenic cousin, Amelia. Perfect. She has these big, bright eyes and this amazing, cascading, curly hair. What could possibly go wrong? Famous last words, right? I rummaged through a drawer and unearthed a dusty set of pencils, a gift from my well-meaning aunt who clearly overestimated my artistic inclinations. They ranged from a hard 9H, which looked suspiciously unused, to a soft, smudgy 9B that seemed to be whispering promises of dramatic shading. I also found a pad of paper that felt important. Thick, creamy, with a slight texture. This felt serious. I cleared the kitchen table, the clatter of mugs and plates echoing the nervous flutter in my stomach. I spread out the paper, the smooth surface cool beneath my fingertips. I placed the postcard of Amelia propped up against a jar of peanut butter. Don't judge, it was the perfect height. Then, I stared, and stared some more. Where do you even begin with a face? You know that feeling when you look at something so simple and yet so complex, you're suddenly overwhelmed by its sheer existence? That was me, staring at Amelia's picture like it held the secrets of the universe. Finally, I took a deep breath, picked up the 2H pencil, felt like a safe bet, and started with the outline. A wobbly oval for the head. 2 smaller ovals, slightly too high and definitely uneven, for the eyes. A squiggly line that was supposed to be a nose. And well, let's just call it a lip-like shape. It looked less than impressive. It looked, in fact, like a potato wearing a wig. I sighed, the sound loud in the quiet kitchen. Winston, sensing my distress, or perhaps just annoyed by my dramatic sighing, jumped onto the table and proceeded to rub his face against my pencil hand. Not helping, Winston, I muttered, but I couldn't help but scratch him behind the ears. Okay, attempt number 2. This time, I decided to focus on the eyes. Amelia's eyes are her most striking feature, large, almond-shaped, a warm hazel color. I carefully sketched the outline, trying to capture their gentle curve. I then attempted to shade the irises, using the softer 4B pencil, going from light to dark, just like all those YouTube tutorials I'd frantically skimmed through. The result? 2 dark, ominous blobs that stared accusingly at me from the page. They looked less like Amelia's eyes and more like the eyes of a haunted doll. I groaned. This was a disaster. A monumental, pencil-shaving-covered disaster. I was about to crumple the paper and consign the whole enterprise to the realm of things I will never attempt again, when I heard the familiar jingle of keys. At the door, my husband, David, walked in, whistling cheerfully. He stopped dead in his tracks when he saw me surrounded by pencils and paper, a look of bewildered amusement on his face. "Whatcha doin'?" he asked, peering over my shoulder. "I'm attempting art," I mumbled, feeling my cheeks flush. He chuckled. "Well, that's something." He picked up my drawing, tilting his head. "Is that Amelia?" I winced. "It's supposed to be." He examined it for a moment longer, then said, with surprising sincerity, "You know, the eyes are intense." I snorted. "Intensely terrifying, you mean?" He laughed, then ruffled my hair. "It's not bad for a first try," he said, which, let's be honest, was a blatant lie. But it was a sweet lie. A supportive lie. The kind of lie that makes you feel a little bit better about your spectacular lack of artistic talent. He then suggested we have pancakes, and, you know what? Pancakes sounded a lot more appealing than staring at my artistic abomination any longer. So, we made pancakes. Fluffy, buttery pancakes, drizzled with maple syrup. And as we ate, we talked about everything and nothing, the smell of pancakes filling the air, the sunlight warm on our faces. And you know what? The failed portrait didn't seem so bad anymore. It wasn't a masterpiece, not even close. But it was a reminder that sometimes, it's okay to try new things, even if you're terrible at them. It's okay to embrace the mess, the imperfections, the laughter that comes from realizing you're not exactly Michelangelo. Later that day, I showed the drawing to Amelia over video chat. She burst out laughing, which, admittedly, stung a little. But then she said, "You know, it's kind of got a Picasso-esque quality to it. Abstract, intriguing." Bless her heart. So, yeah, that was my day of artistic exploration. It wasn't exactly a success story, but it was an experience. A messy, funny, pancake-filled experience. And you know what? I might even try it again someday. Maybe, but probably not. Unless, of course, the muse of badly drawn portraits possesses me again. Who knows? Stranger things have happened, right? Well, thank you so much for joining me today and for staying with me through this whole video. I really appreciate you being here and connecting with me. You know, before we go, if you enjoyed this and want to keep up with our daily English speaking and listening practice, I'd love for you to follow, like, subscribe, and share this video. It really does help. And it made me wonder, what's your next big or small goal for the month? It's always so inspiring to hear what everyone is working towards, plus it's a great way to practice writing and sharing your thoughts in English. Seeing your comments truly brightens my day. So take care, stay consistent with your practice, and I'll see you tomorrow.